Hey, good evening. It's Monday, January 18th, 2019. It's a few minutes before 4:50, let's say. This is a meeting of the Recreation and Parks Committee. To my right is, today's the 28th. Thank you. There you go. I don't even know what I said before that. Thank you for the 18th.
Start all over then.
Wow, this is going the wrong direction. We're just going to keep rolling. All right, thank you.
Sitting on your right.
To my right is Mrs. Oda. To my left is Mr. Terwilliger. Thank you for keeping things rolling. Appreciate it. I'm glad there's almost no one in the crowd. There you go. Thank you, Tom, for recording. We have one item. This is for the Recreation and Parks Committee. Mr. Terwilliger is to my left here, and Mr. Titterington. Mr. Titterington is going to give us information and do way better than what I've been doing so far. So
thank you so much.
The bar is really low right now, so crush it.
We are asking for authorization to advertise for bid and enter a contract for some resurfacing of sections of the recreational trail at a cost not to exceed $210,000. And the authorization is, and the $210,000 is a project that was approved through the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission. It's using federal transportation funds. You should have a map that shows 3 sections that total approximately 1.5 miles of recreational trail. Earlier, I guess late last year, you authorized accepting the right-of-way to get that formalized, which is part of the process that we had to go through before we could actually utilize this money. The $210,000 estimated cost, the feds, the project will reimburse us 80%. You budgeted the rest of that in the 2019 budget. Again, you have the map that shows the sections that were identified. This is probably 5 years ago now, because it got into our long-range plan through MVRPC, which you have to do to be able to get this money. So the fact that we're able to get $168,000 to offset maintenance and repair and reconstruction is pretty good for recreational trail. This is not to be confused with another amount that is in the 2019 budget. I want to say it's $80,000 or $90,000. 90. Thank you. That was the voice of Jill Rhodes, the engineer, who's not on camera. And so later there are other sections that we will want to do, and you will see that come up as part of the annual road repavement program. And that's some additional sections outside of these 3 sections. We have to bid these separately because it is an ODOT project through MVRPC, so we have to treat this separately. Again, we are asking for authorization to bid and to award a contract. The amount would not exceed $110,000 unless the bids go over, and we would come back to you. And we are not requesting emergency legislation.
Thank you. Do you know what the time frame is from beginning to end as far as completion? How long it's going to be under construction or under pavement?
That'll really depend on the bids that come back and the contractors. They will tell us how long they think it's going to take, and that'll be one of the things that we will use in our evaluation, who's the best and lowest bid.
Okay.
It's anticipated a couple of weeks.
Several weeks. Will it?
Several weeks, yeah.
Okay. And will it be unusable while they're doing it?
Yes, during that. So they'll be doing it in phases because it's 3 different sections. We don't know. We don't anticipate it'll be a long time frame.
Okay.
But yeah, when I say a couple weeks, I'm kind of thinking start to finish, like starting on one section, asphalting it. So I don't think any one section would be unavailable without more than a couple of days. Maybe at most a week, say a week each section.
Perfect. That was the question.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Good, thank you. Any questions coming from the other committee members?
This is only within the city limits.
Correct.
The bid, are they just top coating, or are the instructions to dig out roots and that type of stuff?
Well, it really depends on the section, but they will do that if they have to.
Yeah, so they'll be repairing locations that there is lack of base or no base or asphalt failure, and then they'll be overlaying after that.
I guess that was my question. They're not totally digging
They're
it
not
out.
starting all over, no, they're milling and filling, what they call mill and fill, so it's kind of similar to the annual pavement resurfacing projects.
But if I understand correctly now, there will be small segments within the city that are not initially going to get this treatment because they're in another program to come.
Yes, so, sorry, that's what Patrick referred to as the $90,000, that there's more areas that we have to bid separately because of federal funding, you have to keep it separate, that there'll be 90,000 extra additional dollars spent on other areas of resurfacing that we will be resurfacing. And then there's additional locations in addition to that that maybe don't need resurfacing, maybe have been resurfaced in the last 5 to 10 years, that just need some crack seal. And so we'll be we're actually working through the winter when it's dry and there's not that white stuff out there that we can go out there and we'll crack seal through the winter the other areas of the bike path through the city.
But Mr. Terwilliger, one thing that you said that I caught, we could be doing the same thing with those other sections as we would here. It's not necessarily a different process. Mm-hmm. We just have to treat them separately because this can only deal with the ODOT project.
Gotcha.
And we'll do the rest of it later.
Yeah. Mr. Rhodes, you said something about 5 to 10 years. Is that the expected lifespan? How often do we have to come and do this?
I have been here 5 years and we have not asphalted any bike paths. The bike paths, so if you look at a typical street lasts asphalt, depending on the traffic that's on it, lasts anywhere from 15 to 25 years.
Okay.
So I would anticipate that bike paths, depending on the thickness of them, some of them, our understanding is that the asphalt's pretty thin, depending on how many trees are there, if it's shaded or not, where it holds moisture, all those things come into factor. But I would anticipate, honestly, 15 to 20 years. But again, we haven't paved anything in the last 5 years since I've been here, so, but I would say typical would be 15 to 20. Now, I do know that there's some areas in Westbrook, I believe, that we're looking at paving again, but again, trees are there, roots have come up, there's been issues in the last 10 years. We paved them about 10 years ago.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Any other questions from the committee? Yes.
So the difference is just where the funding comes from. It's not who actually is, it's our rec trail. The money, the difference in the projects is just where the funding comes from.
Correct. ODOT approved these 3 sections. And so for us to be accountable and responsible for the project and the funding and how that money is spent, we can only bid on these particular 3 ABC areas.
So there's additional requirements when you get federal highway money, and part of it is like an environmental clearance and things that go well above and beyond what we do as our standard contract. And so that we anticipate adds money to the construction project. But again, it's an 80-20 split between federal highway. So yes, the exact same surface is being applied. It may be applied at 2 different times. Abutting areas may be applied at 2 different times by 2 different contractors, but the same exact surface is being applied.
Do they tell us which areas have to be done?
No,
No,
the
we
area is
identified
here.
that.
So
We said these are the areas that need
Yep.
to be done, and then we applied for the
Yes.
grants for these
Yep.
areas.
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. Everything good? Nice. Sir, what do you think?
Move forward.
Good, move forward. Before we move too far, we have the president of council here. Ma'am, do you have any questions or anything? We've got the mayor and other city staff here. Everybody else good to go? Any of you guys?
I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
You said there was more money coming available. Is that going to be partly for the area south of 41? Runs along the cornfield, runs along the river, comes back up and turns right and goes to Dye Mill?
Wastewater
And
treatment.
the only reason I ask is there's a couple
East
of
of the
those.
river wastewater treatment plant, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I don't have the map in front of, here's what we did though. All right, so we have these 3 areas. We identified those 5 years ago, knowing that they were kind of falling apart, starting to deteriorate. We have maintained those while we knew that we were in that 5-year plan. In the meantime, though, we last fall, in anticipation of the 2019 budget, we actually drove every foot to identify with the street foreman to identify those other areas and what needs to be done. Can't tell you, I don't have that map in front of me, but we are either we're doing one of 3 things to basically every inch of our trail. We're either repairing and reconstructing per the ODOT project, reconstructing as part of the additional money that we will add to the annual road program, or we are crack sealing, and it all depends on what condition the pavement is in that particular area.
Well, and the only reason I was asking is because there's a couple of low areas along that trail that runs, like I said, between Dye Mill and running south of 41. And they tend to silt over after a rain, and then cyclists hit that, and there's been a number of people that have spilled down in there.
Yeah,
You know the area I'm
You're
talking
way
about?
out on the curves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is not going to be building up those. That would be a major project. A good example of where that happens all the time is right there at the golf course. When you go past, can't remember which hole that is.
7.
Is it 7? Along the river,
You
and then
think.
you go down. We would have to put a bridge, believe it or not, over that creek. That is a several $100,000 project by itself just to raise that up. So low spots, we do have alternative routes for high water events. We are working on additional wayfinding signage to make sure that those are properly marked so people know to go around that. That happens everywhere in the trail, whether it's in the city or out in the park district.
As well as those areas are kind of protected from FEMA. They're FEMA flood zone areas, so therefore we can't build them up too far to affect the flow of the water.
Okay. Thank you.
Seems like it makes sense as far as the signage of, hey, if you're going on a bicycle in an area that often gets covered, happens, what's the next step on that? You said that's moving forward to try to get some signage out there?
It is.
Perfect.
It is constructed, it's now being marked.
Perfect. How would you like to move forward as a committee? Move forward, you don't need emergencies on this at all? You still good with moving forward, Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes, I am.
Okay, looks like we are all 3 agreeing on moving forward. Do we have anything else to come before us today? All right, we'll be